Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight, and inspiration.
On this episode, we have the video editor and self-described AI enthusiast, Dustin Elkin, on. Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight. I am your host for this episode, Tara Jabbari. Dustin has over 15 years of experience specializing in creating high-quality content and visual stories with skill sets in motion graphics, sound design, color grading, captioning, transcription, graphic design, and more. He's worked in the Los Angeles and Chicagoland area for companies like CBS, Mattel, and the Hallmark channel. He also recently started the Video Editing Guru podcast, where he covers best practices, creative techniques, and game-changing tips in the art of video editing for creators at any level. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tara, for having me. I know it's been a while since we've spoke, and I'm excited that you're having me on, and it's a pleasure. So thank you.
Yes, I was going to say, so we first met in college. We both went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. And do you remember my nickname for you?
I believe it was Vito.
Yeah.
Right? And I was going to ask you, I forgot that origin again. I was going to ask you where it came from.
So
my memory is
so you were the year ahead of me, and we studied the degree was called like electronic media, which made us sound like engineers, which kind of helped. But we were studying media production, right? And we learned camera operating, audio production, producing all sorts of stuff. And then you also were working at, what was it? The production office. So all the students.
Correct.
So like if you were a junior and a senior, you were in the production office working. And then the freshmen and sophomores, if we had editing classes, for instance, mostly the editing classes, those would take the longest time. We had to sign up for the studio class. Not class, but like a room.
Yes.
And then you
like
had
editing bay.
And then you had to finish editing. But it was my first time, and a lot of times it was the first time you were learning how to edit. We learned on Avid, but it would be the simplest things. You're like, how do you export? And you're like, I was meant to cut, but I deleted, and how did I do that? And oh my God. So then you would always go, and the person in the production office would be the one who would be like, calm down, we know what we're doing and we'll help you.
That's why we were there. Yep.
Right? And usually you were the one who was working when I had to use the editing bay. And I always felt like I owed you a favor because you were always helping me. So I called you Vito because I like the Godfather, Vito Corleone.
Gotcha. Okay. As you were telling that story, I was like, okay, this is
reminding you of stuff. And then I started working at the production office. You guys graduated, and I would text you and be like, Dustin, now I'm the Vito. Because now I would see all these freshmen and sophomores, and they're like, Tara, I'm freaking out. I'm so sorry to bother you again. And I'd be like, it's fine. And they're like, I owe you a big one. I'm like, I'm Vito.
I know you were my replacement.
I know.
But oh my gosh. It's kind of fun to see that come, full circle.
I know, but that was like when we studied that. But did you know editing, or was that also your first time learning really how to edit video and audio and all that at Bradley?
It was definitely my first time using like the big boy software, that being Avid. But before then is when, I was picking up my mini DV Sony camera and filming and kind of editing on iMovie and Windows Movie Maker at home. So I knew about editing and how to do it, but obviously Bradley just took it to a whole new level and really, launched my career in video editing.
I remember you did go pretty much after graduation to Los Angeles, and you started not just solely in editing. You did other forms like camera operating and other stuff. How did you end up really focusing on video editing?
Yeah, so it was really just a couple months after graduating in 2010 where I was like, I gotta give this a try. I gotta wing it. I'm like, bye family, bye girlfriend. Like I got to give this a try and see what happens. So my parents and I drove out there, and obviously, it's a rough start at first, being at a younger age like that and not having a job or a place lined up to live. So we had to search for a place. That was number one. And then number two was just getting my foot in the door somewhere. And that started as a production assistant on The Bachelorette. I think Ashley was the Bachelorette at the time. I don't know what number season that was. But it was really just myself working my way up the totem pole, and worked a lot of PA jobs, and like you mentioned, some camera work as well, including Big Brother seasons 14 or 13 and 14, I think. So
did you like doing those, or were you more like, no, I still liked doing post more?
I enjoyed it. When you're out there working, they're long days, 12, 14, 15-hour days. And as a PA, you're running around and you're doing a lot. But at that time of my life, and when you're a PA, you kind of know, like, you got to work hard now at the beginning to get to where you want to go to. And also for me to kind of talk to the right people and just gather more experience on my end from the editing side of things. Like, it's a great way to kind of learn the production industry as a whole, and really just kind of set me up for success for later down the line, and what got me to where I'm at today.
When you got more established in your speciality and stuff, what became your favorite? And I also like asking your least favorite aspects of it.
It was definitely a couple of years into me living out there when I landed my first job as a editor, actually assistant editor, on a couple different shows. And for me, like, that was just like a turning point in my life and my career, knowing that, like, I was a PA for a while and did some camera work, but it's not quite what I want to do. So landing that first job as an assistant editor, or AE for short, was really, a game changer at the time. Although, the fun part about it is that I get to sit at a computer finally and actually do some editing. I think it was Final Cut Pro at the time I was first using. And just knowing that, like, I made that step up and I'm editing footage and I'm putting a story together, that's what I love to do. Least favorite part is obviously sometimes as an assistant editor, you kind of have to do the brunt work. So you have all this footage, you got to line up, cuts and create stories to hand off to the video editor or the lead editor, really whoever's above you at the time. So when like, it's not work that sometimes you don't want to do exactly, because it's a lot of prep. There's a lot to do with the footage and the audio and the syncing of it. And it takes a lot of time. So it's not the most fun, but it's necessary.
And what advice do you have for people who might be interested in getting involved in this profession? I
know, like, it's tough to find that first job, whether it's a full-time job or freelance, but you just need to, like, sign up for every account, head to social, apply, whether it's LinkedIn, which I've gotten a lot of jobs through, Facebook, I've gotten a ton of jobs through. You'd be surprised. Join groups, interact, engage. And once you do land that first job, whether it's your dream job or not, you just have to work your butt off. And if it's a small job, if it's a big job, you have to just put all your effort into it and create the best content and story possible, because all it takes is for, one person to see it and be like, wow, like, this is awesome, Dustin. Like, and that can just take you up to the next level, and get you to where you want to go. Yeah,
it's true. I've heard it. They say this to actors, stage actors. They're like, you perform to the back of the row, whether it's a small theater where it only fits like 10 people to a sold out Madison Square Garden, or like musicians, right, in concerts and stuff. They're like, it doesn't matter. You give it your all. And it's true in all the aspects in any profession, really. So if you're editing a small reel for somebody, or if it's editing for the next, like, Oscar contender, doesn't matter if you really put your all into it. But you're right, it is boring when you're like, oh, I have to do that one little smudging thing. And those little things.
When that kind of pairs with, like, pay too, because that's a big thing in the industry too, and that's always changing. But 10, 12 years ago, when I was just trying to get my foot in the door, sometimes I had to take on a smaller editing project with maybe a really quick turnaround and not a lot of pay, but like you mentioned, like I didn't know at the time who was going to see that video, or when I'm updating my website and demo reel on like a yearly basis, obviously I've gotten jobs on people commenting on something they saw on my website, and that sets up an interview, and next thing you know, I get the job. So yeah, in this profession, especially video editing, like so many people can see your content, and you just have to put all you have into it because you love doing it, and you never know who's going to see it.
Now, you did end up going back to Chicago, where you're from. That girlfriend became your wife. I know people might be wondering. Don't worry.
Correct.
It's a happy ending. But you kind of went for more personal reasons, not necessarily professional reasons, and you're now more freelance but you worked with more companies and corporations like Mattel, and you worked with CBS and things like that, and Hallmark Channel and stuff. Could you share the sort of pros and cons of working sort of like that steady, like, oh, I work with this company, I have these benefits, I have these things, and then working on your own, looking for jobs constantly on LinkedIn, on Facebook, all that stuff?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's almost like two different worlds. When you have a full-time job, whether it's a small business or a big corporation or studio, you kind of feel comfort and at ease knowing like, the pay might be a little higher. You have the benefits, you have your 401k, like you have all of that, health insurance, which is really nice. And if you enjoy the job, obviously stick it out as long as you can. My last job, I was there for almost 9 years. And so, the team was great. The people were great. And like, I can't complain about anything until they let me go because of budget reasons. But working corporate, I love doing. And then there's also the freelance side of things where there's more flexibility in that. Currently I work from home, and basically you can set your own hours, take on the projects that you want to take on, set your own pay. But then from a benefit standpoint, you might not have all of that. So there's a mix of both. Obviously, a big thing of it is preference and what people want to do and how much flexibility they want to have in their work-life balance. I've enjoyed both throughout my career. I prefer, full-time at the end of the day. But from time to time, when a freelance gig comes up and I can take it on, it's kind of fun to do as well.
So my career, I've always been pretty much contract-based and freelance. So I'm not used to working for a company, one person, let alone a corporation, right? So I was always looking for the hustle and stuff. And that's not necessarily by choice, but I also was able to, I'm also a nomad. I was working literally in Antarctica and all sorts of stuff. So, but when I talk to people who do have like full-time jobs, sometimes they're not allowed to work remotely. Sometimes they did, and they're like, they don't need to know. And then they sometimes also would get freelance jobs, whether it's an editing job or a copywriting job and things like that. You don't have to admit if you've ever done it, but in your experience, how has that been? Do companies allow people to do side jobs? And if they don't, what have you seen people do?
It depends on like where you're working and what's kind of like written in the details from like HR and like do not compete clause. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So some jobs will lay it out at the beginning during the onboarding and the paperwork that you're filling out. Like you cannot really take on any other projects or work that's unacceptable. You cannot do that. So obviously I don't do that. If I do take on a project, it might be for like a personal reason. I didn't need like a montage from an uncle's birthday that I'll do on a Saturday or Sunday, something that's quick and easy. But otherwise, my full-time jobs have always kept me busy with work, and I don't really need or want to take on more work. But I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I was unfortunately let go from my last job. So obviously during that, moment or time of unemployment, I picked up a bunch of freelancing gigs and kept busy up until when I did find another job at Bally's, like the casino and hotel. So I work on Bally's Interactive, which is a department really working in editing and dealing with all the media that goes into their Bally's Live app. So it's like it's sports editing, which I love sports. So it's a great mix of like production and sports. And yeah, so I've been busy since then, working full time again. So that's again what I prefer. So it's been a ride and it's been a lot of fun.
And do you get to still work from home?
I do, which is super nice. That's with the family and the kids and, my schedule, it just helps out with everything. So like you said, in this industry, you'll have a full-time job, you'll have a contract job for 3 to 4 months, knowing when it ends, or, unfortunately, things happen and you get let go and you kind of have to find your way and keep going, which I did, luckily just for a few months until I, landed the job at Bally's.
And I think it goes back to what we were talking about when you were back as a PA and all that. It was, you always put your best foot forward because they'll always remember you.
Yep.
Because if this doesn't work out, budget reasons and whatever, they'll keep you in mind and they're like, oh, but I know somebody who is looking, or, and then, so because they always liked their experience with you. So as well as you did a good job, right?
Yeah. Like it's not just your experience and your skills and your talent, but it's also your work ethic. That's like the other half of it. Like I've had jobs in LA where I'll work a job for a few months, maybe as a PA, but they know I want to edit, and I've expressed that, and I've created great relationships with other people. And it'll be a few months, maybe a year later, where I'll get like a random email from someone asking, are you still editing? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, like, do you want a job or do you want to come in for an interview type of thing? So yeah, you just never know.
Thank you for sharing that kind of trajectory of your career. But one thing is that you also started a podcast recently, The Video Editing Guru, and it's AI based. And, we're connected on LinkedIn, and you were always sharing interesting things about AI's capabilities and stuff. And you're kind of a fan of it, while a lot of people are worried about it and things. Can we sort of talk about AI? What is it that you're intrigued by and not so scared of? And those discussions that you might have had with people who are like, are you crazy, Dustin? They're taking our jobs.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Of course, in the back of my mind, I'm always worried about that. Like when AI gets that advanced, will it take away my job? But for the time being, I like to research and implement and kind of just test out different AI tools. And from a video editing standpoint, I like to use them because they enhance the content that I work with and improve the workflows like tremendously, to the point where like normally it would take hours, if not days, to render out upscale footage so it looks like 4K. No, I can do it within minutes and it'll be ready. So for me, I've been fascinated with the different tools that are out there from basically every tech company and video production companies coming out with their own tools now. But for me to be able to implement, editing audio a certain way and video a certain way and transitions and effects to a degree where it's like it can be done in seconds, it just helps me out as a video editor and the quality of work that I provide people, and also just like at the speed of which I can edit to. So it's been great. And then when it comes to the podcast, I've always wanted to do that and kind of just express my knowledge and experience and opinions to others, whether they listen to it or not. But I've always just wanted to get it onto my computer and just out into the world. And this program called Podcrafter, it basically uses AI to create podcasts, transitions, music within minutes as well, and scripts. So I'm able to produce, I do about a podcast a week. I can literally produce it, edit it, and send it out within maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So it's super quick, and it's interesting to explain it to people because I clone my voice. But then
I was going to ask, it's not you.
It's not me saying those words, but it's my voice. I tried explaining it to my parents one time, and it just went over the head.
Well, the first couple episodes is not your voice at all. And then it became your voice. And I was like, oh, he's really good at reading it. Wait, that's probably not him.
Yeah, that was me just testing the waters using like an AI voice clone that they provided. And I was like, wait a minute, I should just clone my own voice and use that. So
I think it helps because you're the one. Yeah. And like, for instance, I liked some of the episodes I listened to that I found really useful is the storage. What kind of cloud-based storage is recommended? Dropbox versus Google Drive versus a couple of other things and the different price points. I don't edit as much anymore, but all these photographs and videos that we are so easily being able to do with our phones and, with babies and with trips and all that stuff. And you're like, what if something happens to my phone? Yeah. You want it backed up somewhere, but where is the best place? So I was like, I've been meaning to do that. And then I was researching for this as well. And I'm like, oh, damn, he has an episode on this. So, so that was useful. But with
even
those
like a good hard drive too.
Yeah. And then I always have the hard drive, but it's always harder because you actually have to do it physically. But the last time I actually did a physical hard drive was during lockdown in 2020 because we had nothing else to do. And I got to nicely organize it. And I was like, this is May 2019, June 2019, and all this. And I'm like, nope, don't have time for that.
Have time to organize everything. Yeah.
With all of those, is it also helpful for you, or did you have those ideas of like, okay, I'll do storage, this is the best way for licensing, this is, all that stuff?
The topics, no, it just me kind of having ideas in the back of my mind for a long time on like what I wanted to share. But also I'll kind of, hop on Google and research some more like trending topics. And then I'll just see a word or two or something that just crosses my mind. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like the audience should know about storage or storytelling or audio editing. So there's so much that can be talked about in the post world that I assume that I can probably do this for a little while longer until I'm like, out of ideas. So,
and and it really is about 5 minutes kind of spelled out.
Yeah. They're pretty short compared to a lot of other podcasts. So I don't want to bore anybody with like all these. No,
but it was useful because there's lots of podcasts like we do. This is a traditional, more like two conversation based one, which I really enjoy. But if you did want to be like, where can I find this and this? It's sort of, just go to the Video Editing Guru podcast.
Yeah, I just like to let people know what's going on. And
I have one other question. So you've worked with like Bally's and then you've worked, which is more of like
Wiley's
a company.
Another one. Wiley Education Services.
That
was
my
last job. Yeah, that was my last full-time job.
So it was like but you have the corporate companies that you don't think of. And you're like, oh yeah, they do need video editing and they need video for apps or for their online material. Then you've worked on social media for Hallmark Channel and for Big Brother and Bachelorette and stuff, which is the more traditional things that we think of. But you also worked with influencers, and we've spoken with some influencers. Just social media in general. What we've also started doing for this podcast is making smaller clips because it's another way of promoting, like 60-second clips, highlighting stuff and like teasers and stuff. Two parts to this, actually. Cool. One thing is because I was trained by the best, you, Vito, and our teachers and stuff. But also, I can't stand trying to edit within a social media platform, whether it's TikTok or Instagram. They want you to edit in them.
Yeah, use their software and all that. Yeah.
I can't stand it, but they want you to because they say it's, or CapCut even, and all that stuff.
It's a very popular one.
But it's, so your experience of that, because they get the licensing of music. So if you wanted to try and fit the music perfectly, if you want a Harry Styles song, you're going to have to do it in their app. Exactly. So annoying. So I wanted to vent with you about that. But also, too, with working with people on social media and people who solely do things like influencers with social media, where do you see this trend go? Is it a trend, or is it something that's here to stay? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to social media videos, a lot of companies will hire an editor, but like they're still kind of green, which means that they don't have a ton of experience. So they'll have them use, like you said, CapCut or edit within, TikTok or Facebook. But for me, like quality wise, it's not just this. It's not the same. For me, like having an actual video editor use maybe Avid or Premiere, like myself, to really fine tune the details and use all the effects and all that to make the content look its best. I think it's the way to go. When it comes to that, that's what I believe in. For the second part, social media videos are not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Like there's constantly new trends and ways of shooting things and all that. That's just ever growing. Like I'm constantly scrolling through TikTok and all that just to look for specific styles, and I notice certain things. And yeah, it's so big right now because the 60-second to 2-minute videos are super popular, and people's attention spans aren't very long these days. So everyone scrolls, I think, on social. So engaging content that sticks out with maybe not a lot of text, captions most likely is huge right now. And being able to tell a story within, let's say, that 30 to 60 second time frame is also not an easy task. So that's something where like a video editor really can come into play and make some content shine, because you're representing a brand and your company, and thousands, if not millions of people could be seeing it depending on how you're advertising it.
Well said. Well put. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of share, or thoughts on this profession that we haven't really touched on?
Again, I'm always one to like lend a hand in my experience and help others, because back in the day, so many people helped me get to where I'm at today. So I'm grateful for that. So if you're just starting out, just, try to get as much experience and practice as you can, even if that's just, filming some footage around your house or with family members, just learning the platform that you want to edit on, and research, watch YouTube videos, because I still do that. And I learn a lot on YouTube as well. Search YouTube, everything's there. And, just work hard. And, if you're just getting out of college or in college, just try to gather as much experience as possible and be proactive and listen, and just, your skills and everything will kind of improve from there.
Well, thank you, Dustin. I'll have it in the show notes, your website, your Video Editing Guru podcast. So
sounds good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And everyone. So consider really looking into proper editing and none of that nonsense with the apps.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIF, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candace Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabbari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakersSpotlight.com for more information.